Domestic violence affects women from all walks of life, mothers, wives and daughters. On average, 1 woman in 4 will be a victim of domestic violence. So, chief police officers have suggested setting up a register of convicted male offenders and men merely accused by 2 women or more of violent behaviour to help women avoid these relationships. Our last big question, should there be a domestic violence register? Pat, you believe very much that there should. You think this is another weapon in the armoury. Lots of people are saying, but why should it just be men on the register? Why shouldn't violent women be on the register, for example?
Because the main perpetrators of domestic violence in our society are men. And the main victims are women. I have received this news with delight because I've been campaigning and trying to inform women and children about how abusive men operate, how to spot them, how to avoid them, and how to get over the effects they've had on us and our children for 15 years. When I first started doing this, the idea that anyone would even think about having a register of abusive men was ridiculous.
We've come a long way, haven't we?
We didn't take it seriously. The courts didn't take it seriously, the government didn't. And I think that the fact that this debate is existing means that we are changing, we are learning, and things are improving.
But these are men merely accused. They haven't even been convicted of anything.
Does that harm them? I mean, if I meet a charming man and I go on the internet and find that he has actually accordingly abused 2 other women, what? I just can avoid him, can't I? I'm not going to go around and burn his house down. I can avoid him.
What if you've fallen in love with him?
Well, that's the problem, because although this register is a step in the right direction, if I've fallen in love, say, with you, I know you were on there.
Who could blame you?
And who could blame me? Yeah. And you were on there. I'd say, Nick, you're on the register. And you'd say, my former partner was such a horrible woman.
I knew I'd say, Pat, you don't understand. She was a nightmare.
She was. She made me hit her as well, and I didn't want to.
But you would give me short shrift for all that.
No, I wouldn't.
No, but you would if you were sensible. But the point is, Cristina is a very interesting, and I'll come right back to you, but there's an interesting psychological thing here. When you've just met somebody, are you in that psychological place, which means you're going to check them out because you might be excited by the relationship?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it's psychologically inconceivable that a woman who's just in the first blush of romance is going to go onto the internet. Now, I don't think it's going to be on the internet anyway. I think you would actually have to make an application to the police authority to be able to have information about this individual. But not only that, and more importantly, it's actually not going to keep women safe, because women are not going to use it. It's looking at things in the wrong way. It's not focusing on the real issues. If the government have got money to spend, then spend it on perpetrator programmes, spend it on counselling support for women and children.
It's just part of an arsenal. I mean, what I want everyone to do really is come on my freedom programme, and then they'll understand the issues.
But
and also use the register.
Only 14% of incidents actually get reported. Cristina Odone, I mean, you're very happily with a partner now, but you know, as many of us, you went on a quest, didn't you, and to find the right person, and eventually you did. Your current husband, would you have checked him out on a register like this?
It would never have crossed my mind, but I think that there's...
Why not?
Because I think that there's a scope for such incredible injustice with something like a register. You know, we talk about paedophile registry, and they've been an incredible tool in the arsenal, as you said, for quashing paedophile rings, which are organized crime. And that makes sense. But what we're talking about with domestic violence is one person against another. So it's one person, say, against another. And so frequently, you can just see how 2 very angry ex-lovers could say, look, you know, he was very abusive in his verbal behavior. And remember that abuse in this register is also verbal abuse. You know, he was very verbally abusive. He put me down. I felt really quashed by him. And lo and behold, the man is ruined for life. Because let's face it, you're on a register like that, it's like social services. You know, you are never, ever going to be able to be...
This is about violence, this register. This is about violence.
But we're talking about injustice. I mean, violence is horrible, but so is injustice. And the thought that somebody could be on a register and be blackballed for the rest of his life because somebody decided that they were going to have a vendetta is, I think, just is just too dangerous.
Oh,
Well,
Margaret, yes, sorry,
Yes,
Margaret. You go.
if I can come in, what I'd like to say is, do the audience realise that 2 women a week are murdered by their partners on average? Now, surely anything that can reduce that has got to be worth doing.
Ray, you're Fathers for Justice, yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's the basis, the statistical basis for all of this, which I would really want to question. Domestic violence is completely misrepresented. 40% of the victims of domestic violence are men. This proposal for a register doesn't help that 40% of the victim group at all. It is only for female victims.
Well, it's 70% when it comes to incidents and convictions are women. You're talking about the unreported.
I'm talking about the figures from the most reliable source of all, which is the British Crime Survey published by the Home Office. And year after year, it consistently shows 40% of victims of domestic abuse are men, 60% are women. And where there's such a very large, yes, it's a minority, but such a very large minority, there is no justification whatsoever for having initiatives that only address the needs of the 60% who happen to be women.
Pat,
It's blatant
you've got
sex
to come back on that. Then I'll come to the lady in red, just behind you.
I have to say that I don't agree with you, and there's no surprise to anybody watching. I don't agree with your figures. I don't agree with the statistics.
They're not my figures,
And
they're the Home Office figures.
I
They're
also
irrefutable.
want to go back to linking what you said, Cristina, in that I run the Freedom Programme for Women. I've run it for thousands of women who've come on our Freedom Programme. Most of them have been too ashamed and too afraid to tell anyone that they are victims of domestic violence, because most of us, when we are victims of domestic violence, we blame ourselves.
Surely that's going to apply even more so to a male victim. A male victim is going to even be even more ashamed
Because
to actually admit
culturally-
that. So I think there's no good reason being given here
I
as
would
to
like
why
to
this register should not also cover male victims.
I'd like to just come back to the male victims.
Well, wait, let's hear from Pat, then I
Because
promise the
let's
lady
look at
behind.
the body count. We've got a woman killed every 3 days. That's 112 women a year murdered by partners and former partners. The last Home Office figures I got were 22 men a year.
That's
There's
still
a hell of a
22 too many.
big gap.
That is not a reason. Nobody's saying don't do it for what we're saying is why exclude female perpetrators? Why?
Okay, lady here, what would you like to say?
Could I come in? I think domestic violence is unacceptable, whatever the sex of the perpetrator and the victim. But also, I would take issue with you, Cristina, because actually verbal abuse is also domestic violence.
I agree,
It
but-
destroys the person who's being put down, whether that's the man or the woman, it destroys them.
Ajmal, do you think there's a too broad a definition here of domestic?
I think the domestic violence that has been defined by Cristina includes both verbal and physical abuse, as well as economic, of course. We should condemn it outright. We should ban such behavior. But to create a register does open up a huge room for abuse, more, and injustice. Any law that contains injustice can't be a good law. I would support a program that would help. The lady over there was talking about counseling program that will change the culture. I would like to see a culture change starting from the outset, from the families. Children who have been abused, they end up being abusers themselves. We need to cut that cycle of abuse
What
as soon
sort
as
of people
possible.
might be included on this register who unjustly?
I think, for example, you've just said 2 people who have just merely made an accusation of a person and he has not been convicted, could also be included in that register. It's very open to abuse as far as I'm concerned, and injustice. If somebody is convicted and they've been convicted and that information is contained within the police record, even today, if one wants to, and if the law is made to allow such information to be made available on request, it's a different discussion. But I think justice must be at the forefront of it. Everyone must know that it is not acceptable. There should be a culture change, and more importantly, there should be a program to support all so that they don't do this and we end the cycle of violence all the way.
Kelvin Mackenzie, do you think this is a valuable tool?
I think my main issue about this is how on earth is this going to be conducted? It's not a conviction, we've agreed on that, it's an allegation. Yeah. You're looking at two sets of... by the way, I think ACPO have gone completely balmy. I think they've got not enough work to do as senior police officers to come up with this. But so two allegations are made about you. What are you going to do? You're clearly not going to be able to go online, because if you did go online, anybody could find out anything about anybody. So presumably you have to go to some department. And when you go to the department, what are you going to say to them? Say, look, I've been going out with X for how many months? Does she then have to prove it? Does she have to have a countersigned piece of paper by X to allow him to be checked? And if he won't give it, does that mean that there is a problem? Or is he just a freedom-loving person who's not going to give it? There are 1,001 reasons why this shouldn't happen. However, the general sense that there are people crawling around in the undergrowth who are swamp-like creatures, who are vile, I totally buy.
But being checked doesn't hurt anyone. I don't mind anyone checking me. I'd check you.
Yes, I know, but supposing somebody is not as free-thinking, as media-savvy as your good self, right, says, actually, well, I don't want to do that. Does the romance end there and then? Is it a question mark? How does it all work?
And also,
human relationship.
Can I say another thing? One of the terrible problems with domestic violence is women will not press charges. I don't know what men's statistics are, but women will not press charges. That woman who was killed the other day, do you remember? Her hand was chopped off, she was killed, and twice she had called police in, and then they get there and she doesn't press charges against her partner.
Ajmal, you were going to say something.
Isn't it also very important that the law has changed?
There are 20 attacks very often on average, before a woman reports this to the police.
So why would a register make any difference to this?
I think it's about
changing that.
Because you can see, there are patterns in this behaviour. Men do it again and again. That's what Pat argues.
Men who think they can touch a woman and physically be violent or be verbally abusive, or even a woman for that matter, they need complete re-education, they need different training, they need to be rehabilitated into normal civilized world. You put them on the register, it's not solving the problem. You creating all sorts of barriers in the society would help, but register is not going to help.
Mark, what happened to you a few years ago with an ex-wife? Let me ask you this, because you told me earlier on.
Can I ask the lady and I'll tell you.
Right.
Would you put me on the register for poking my partner on the arm?
Well,
yes,
explain what you mean.
Yes or no?
Explain what you mean.
20 years ago, I poked my partner on the arm. It went to court, and I was found guilty by a magistrate, not a jury, of assault. I'll tell you the consequences of that. I had to have supervised access to my son. A little social worker sitting in the background with a clipboard, how I interact with my son for 6 weeks. Then, because of her taking advantage of the situation and exaggerating that I'm a wife beater, I didn't see my son for 13 years.
Was she bruised?
She was no injury whatsoever. It was common assault. So you're saying take it further than that, and I get more punishment, yeah?
She had no bruise at all?
No injury at all. There was maybe a slight red mark, which was marked, but it was thrown out of court. A common assault. I poked her on the arm in an argument about access to my son. I didn't see my son for 13 years. I went and seen him on his 16th birthday, and it's been very, very difficult ever since. I deserve that?
I am delighted to answer you. It is very, very difficult to get a conviction for any kind of domestic violence in court. And so...
one incident, one complaint...
And all men who abuse women minimise it. And they all say things like it was only a poke. It was only a slap.
One complaint, one incident.
So... I've listened to what you've said.
Do I deserve to be on it?
Know the court system, and I know the legal system, and my knowledge of the legal system is, can I say, you got convicted. You were convicted.
Did my son deserve 13 years not seeing his father for that reason?
Okay, let's hear. You've had your hand up for ages. Go on.
I think as victims of abuse, it's so hard to get a conviction in the first place. Surely being on the register will highlight the people that need the rehabilitation and the help. And I think victims of abuse would welcome somewhere to go to check. I think we're more wary, perhaps, than most.
It would highlight some of them. This is the problem, but by no means all of them. Your gentleman blue shirt, go on.
I was going to say that if a man is put onto the register for a couple of instances, then say, for example, we rehabilitate this person and he's seen the problem, what he's done. He's seen that he's done something bad, and he sees that he doesn't want to do anything like that anymore. And he wants to change. Will he still be on that register, even though he says that he's changed? I'm not condoning anything like that because I think it's disgusting, but I'm just saying, will they be stuck on it?
This is the idea of redemption, isn't it? Christina, not necessarily redemption, but I know you've got something else to say about this issue.
Well, domestic violence is obviously, it's an abhorrent crime. There's no doubt about that. Nobody here is saying domestic violence is a good thing. However, the register would actually potentially erode some very fundamental civil liberties that we have. And we do that, I think, very much at our peril. And I just want to say that the latest statistics that I've seen, of course it's statistics down statistics, but one woman every 3 days, one man every 10 days is killed by their partner or their ex-partner. So it isn't just an issue that divides down the gender lines. It is across, it's no respecter of anything or anyone, anybody, bless you, anybody can suffer from domestic violence.
But which is the bigger injustice, a man being on the register or a woman being killed? Ray?
Well, I think Pat mentioned earlier about the body count, and yes, it is higher for women deaths than for men deaths. But I think we've just had a wonderful example here of another form, and very important form, of domestic abuse, of denial of seeing one's children for 13 years. Now, that really isn't regarded by the courts as any matter for prosecution. Yet I think most of us who've experienced that kind of thing would say it's the worst possible thing that anybody could do to me. And one statistic that isn't looked at when you talk about the body count is that so many men are driven to suicide when they lose touch with their children, when they're denied reasonably a relationship with their children. The male suicides are triple female suicides. This is happening time and time again within Fathers for Justice.
Very quickly.
We find this all the time.
I just want to say that many women who suffer domestic abuse also commit suicide. Now, I'm in favour of the register being gender neutral. I have no objection.
3 times as many men.
Okay,
let's not
finish your point very quickly if you could.
I have no objection to the register being gender neutral. I think that's very important. But if, like me, you've worked with women who've been seriously abused, I remember one case I was involved in when my client was raped.
Okay.
The police took proceedings.
I'm so sorry. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much. We'll see you after Christmas. Have a great holiday.